So you were riding high, perhaps literally, on the Colorado bandwagon, until the Oregon Ducks beat the dog shit out of them. And now you're acting like a girl who went out with the game on a mid-90s dating show. Yes, you've had a change of heart. You're jumping on the Oregon Ducks bandwagon. Well, don't shed any tears over the big move, because we've got you covered at the Hit Stick with the Bandwagon Jumper's Guide to Oregon Football. Spoiler alert, this is a tale of sorrow and disappointment. The University of Oregon is based in a town called Eugene, which is about a 2-hour drive from civilization. That is, if the city of Portland, Oregon still qualifies as civilization these days. And yes, I can say that because I spent the past 4 years living there, so don't try to get at me in the comments. Eugene's mostly known for the university, but it's also known to be one of the worst places in the country to live if you have grass allergies. But one of the best places to live in the country if you're into meth. Just like Boulder, Eugene is known for hiking and for having a lot of white people. And while it doesn't offer skiing, it does offer kayaking and outdoor camping. And the other kind of outdoor camping. You know, homelessness. Perhaps Eugene's biggest claim to fame is its ties to a certain Uncle Phil. No, not that Uncle Phil, the other one, Phil Knight, the multi-billionaire founder of Nike. Knight attended the University of Oregon, and while he was there, he worked with running legend and Oregon track and cross country coach Bill Bowerman, who was the developer of the Waffle Sole. Together, they founded Nike, with the goal of making shoes for sports competition. And apparently the long-term goal of leveraging hype-beast influencers so they can overcharge you for ugly shoes designed by celebrities that are not at all conducive to playing sports in. The university's mascot is a duck. Not exactly the most intimidating mascot in college sports, but perhaps it's the most lovable. You may be wondering how the university hasn't been sued into oblivion by Disney. Well, here's why. In 1947, the Oregon Duck, known at that time as Puddles, began to look an awful lot like Disney's Donald Duck. But the athletic director at Oregon was friends with someone at Disney and managed to meet with Disney execs and make a handshake deal that allowed the university to name the mascot Donald Duck and use the likeness of the Disney character. However, if ESPN continues to lose viewers at its current rate, Disney may revisit the agreement and sue the living shit out of the university. Some of the most notable moments in Donald Duck's history include Lee Corso donning the headgear, often with the type of struggle you'd expect of a man that's 125 years old and completely senile. There's also the duck racing into games on a motorcycle, Donald struggling to keep up with his push-up routine when the Ducks drop 80 on an opponent, and the legendary fistfight Donald had with the University of Houston's mascot. The Duck was suspended for a game after that incident. Yet when LeGarrette Blount punched an opposing player into the next century, he was suspended for the remainder of his senior season. Doesn't seem fair if you ask me. The University of Oregon's athletic reputation has grown significantly over the last 2.5 decades. A big part of this was Phil Knight's contributions to the university, which enabled the school to build some of the most impressive training and athletic facilities in the entire country. But perhaps those facilities haven't focused enough on endurance training, as the Oregon football team is best known for letting its fans down late in the season. More on that later. The school's other claim to fame is its uniforms. No team changes its uniforms more than the Ducks, who, objectively speaking, have some of the best uniforms in all of college football. They often debut some of their best uniforms each season when they play their biggest games, which usually means they at least look good losing, typically to an SEC team. I can say that because I'm a Ducks fan, and because it's completely true. The Ducks have had some elite players over the years. For example, Justin Herbert. While he was at Oregon, he played in a system that took his incredible skill set and physical abilities and somehow managed to make him look just okay. Then he went pro and turned into an absolute superstar. Marcus Mariota, on the other hand, well, he set the world on fire in college and then went on to the pros and had a rather disappointing career. His single greatest highlight consisted of him throwing what should have been an interception, catching the ball as it ricocheted off the defender's hands, and then scoring a touchdown. He made this play in the 2018 playoffs, and it inspired the Titans to come back from down 21-3 to beat the Chiefs 22-21. But it still should have been an interception. There was also Joey Harrington. Harrington was a star quarterback that helped bring Oregon back to football relevancy in the late 90s and finished fourth in Heisman voting after a campaign that included a billboard in Times Square dubbing him Joey Heisman. Harrington went on to have a disappointing professional career. This year, Oregon's quarterback is Bo Nix, Once again, the university has featured him on a billboard in New York City as part of his Heisman campaign. I don't expect him to win, and I predict he'll have a far worse pro career than Harrington did. As an aside, while many Duck fans have embraced Bo Nix, there's a pretty strong segment of us that really don't like him. I mean, in his first collegiate game when he was a quarterback at Auburn, he beat an Oregon team with national championship aspirations with a lame duck game-winning touchdown throw. No pun intended. And we're supposed to like him after that? And not to mention, look at the guy. I mean, some of us really want to see this guy get his ass kicked. After the season's over, of course. In recent years, the Ducks have been through a carousel of coaches that the fan base has pinned its collective hopes on. First, there was Chip Kelly, who revolutionized the Ducks' offense and led the team's ascension into relevance before leaving Oregon and stirring up some real shit in Philly with the Eagles. I hear there's a shoot-on-sight directive in Philly, which is perhaps why he's coaching at UCLA, although if I were him, I'd probably be coaching in Hawaii. Next came Mark Helfrich, who led the Ducks to a decent 37-16 record. But most of those wins came in his first 2 seasons coaching the team with a roster full of Chip Kelly's players, including Marcus Mariota. In 2016, the final year of Helfrich's tenure, the team finished an abysmal 4-8. Like most failed players and coaches, Helfrich is now an analyst for Fox. Next up, Willie Taggart, who led the team to a 7-5 record before bolting for his alma mater, Florida State, where he proceeded to go 9-12 before being fired. His shining moment at Oregon? Holding practices that were so demanding that 3 players ended up in the hospital. But he did visit all 3 in the hospital to wish them speedy recoveries. Now that's a player's coach. Next came Mario Cristobal, the offensive line coach under Taggart, who brought a physicality to the program that had been lacking since its inception. Cristobal turned the program around with a 9-4 record in 2018 and an 11-2 record in 2019. Of course, one of those 2 losses was to Bo Nix and Auburn. But that wasn't the loss that hurt most that season. With what seemed a guaranteed invitation to the college football playoffs awaiting them, the Ducks laid an egg, pun intended, losing to a just slightly above average Arizona State team 31-28. Cristobal would return in 2020, but, COVID. Cristobal then departed Oregon to take his talents to Miami, establishing a disturbing trend of Oregon superstars departing the Pacific Northwest for the sun and beaches of southern Florida. Breaking news, Damian Lillard has just been traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Then in 2022, Dan Lanning took the helm. The former defensive coordinator of the Georgia Bulldogs, Lanning led the Ducks to a 10-3 record in 2022 and now has them sitting pretty at 4-0 this season following an absolute dismantling of Colorado. Lanning has become famous for his speech before the Colorado game, which included lines such as, "The Cinderella story ends here," and "They play for clicks, we play for wins." While most people saw these as buzzy catchphrases designed to motivate his team and take subtle shots at the media's infatuation with Deion Sanders in Colorado, many Twitter users seem to believe this was evidence that Lanning is a card-carrying member of the KKK. For most Oregon fans, every year feels the same. You get cautiously excited about the season before it kicks off. Then the team comes out looking like an offensive machine for the first few games of the season, and you start to get excited. By mid-season, the holes in the defense have gotten exposed, but the team is still undefeated because of the great offense. You watch as your team climbs the ranks, and just when it seems inevitable that the team will get invited to the college football playoffs, the Ducks shit the bed against a team like Arizona State, Washington State, or Stanford, typically in a game in which they're 24-point favorites. Then you end up watching the team play in a bowl game that nobody cares about and realize it's going to rain constantly for the next 5 months, after the previous 4 months of constant rain. If you work at Nike, you book several trips to Palm Springs over the next few months and return home just in time to suffer through allergies in the spring and then enjoy the droughts and wildfires that plague each summer. The Ducks are known for always putting together a super fast but super undersized roster. None of their running backs are ever more than 5'7", but all are shifty and run 4.0 40s. That allows the Ducks to run through most of their opponents, until they run into an opponent from the S.E.C. who inevitably manhandles them in the trenches and reminds them that Pac-12 really ain't shit. It's very true that Oregon always gets painfully close to its big moment, but never can get the job done. In 2007, a Dennis Dixon-led Ducks team looked like a sure bet to make it to the national championship game. But Dixon tore his ACL. He still went on to play multiple games with a torn ACL, which is pretty remarkable, but the team just wasn't the same after his injury. At the end of the 2010 season, the Ducks actually made it to the national championship game, only to lose to Cam Newton and Auburn on a last-second field goal. At the conclusion of the 2014 season, Oregon qualified for the college football playoffs and matched up against the returning champ Florida State Seminoles, a team that featured both Jameis Winston and Dalvin Cook, amongst other superstars. In the span of just over 12 minutes, the Ducks transformed a 25-20 lead into a 59-20 rout. But in the national championship game, Mariota and the Ducks couldn't beat Ohio State's third-string quarterback turned superstar Cardale Jones, and they couldn't stop Ezekiel Elliott, who ran all over the Ducks in a 42-20 rout. In 2021, Oregon would get a tiny slice of revenge against Ohio State when the number 22 Ducks went into Columbus and beat the number 6 Buckeyes with C.J. Stroud by a score of 35-28. Of course, Oregon lost 3 of its final 4 games of the season that year because they're the Ducks. Here are some of the most notable NFL players to have come out of Oregon. In 1999, the lowly Cincinnati Bengals continued their run of draft busts by taking quarterback Akili Smith number 3 overall. Akili Smith would go on to start 17 games in his career and throw just 5 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. In 2001, quarterback A.J. Feely was drafted in the 5th round by the Eagles. His claim to fame would later be marrying 3-time Olympic medal-winning soccer player Heather Mitts, who consequently is from Cincinnati. In 2002, the Lions took Joey Harrington with the 3rd overall pick. He would go on to start 76 games over 6 seasons for the Lions and throwing 79 touchdowns and 85 interceptions. This isn't to say all Ducks struggle in the NFL. Some recent standouts include Marcus Mariota. Okay, he struggled a little. Defensive end DeForest Buckner. Broncos running back Royce Freeman. Chargers standout quarterback Justin Herbert. Lions Pro Bowler Penei Sewell. 2022 5th overall pick defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau, and Patriots first round pick in this most recent draft, Christian Gonzalez. And then of course there was also Kansas City Chiefs player DeAnthony Thomas, who interestingly grew up playing youth football in LA for Snoop Dogg in the Dogfather's own youth football league. So that's the Oregon Ducks in a nutshell. Nature, wilderness, Disney characters, massive letdowns every year, speed and meth. My advice, if you're on this bandwagon, get ready to jump off of it as soon as the season heads into its final weeks. By then, there should probably be a frontrunner for the national championship from the Big Ten or the SEC. And take my word for it, as a Ducks fan, the Ducks just won't be there.